Welcome back to Our Life, Part 2. Okay, come back before it gets dark, alright, sport? The familiar voice drifted across the street and drew your attention away from the snail you've been watching inch slowly across the pavement. Okay, if you don't know, this is Our Life, Beginnings and Always. This is part 2 to the first part that I did. And I'm continuing it. Cove waited in front of his dad, pushing his green hair back off his face from where the breeze was blowing in over his glasses. He looked to be paying only a mild amount of attention as he was being handed a few slips of green paper. It reminded you of when you first met Mr. Holden, although he's probably not paying Cove to be friends with himself. Cove's dad seemed to feel your gaze somehow, or maybe you made a noise, because a second later his eyes were on you. He waved you over with a smile. He looked happy to see you, but you still felt a little weird for getting caught. You've gotta learn how to be more sneaky. You brushed your hands together to free them of sand, then jogged over to join the two, smiling at Cove first, and then his dad. Jamie, hi!
How's it going?
Good to see you again. What excitement are you up to today, Jamie? Stuff. I found a really cool snail across the road. He was slimy with funny eyes and a nice shell. Mr. Holden grinned at your enthusiasm. After you finished answering the question, Mr. Holden's attention returned to Cove, who was preoccupied with folding the bills he had into a tiny rectangle. Sounds fun. You know, Cove was about to hit the stores by the beach. Why don't you go with him? You gave a ready nod, turning to squint in the direction of the stores like you could see the goods they had to offer all the way from where you stood. Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't mind. Great, I'm sure you guys will have loads of fun. Mr. Holden reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather wallet filled with money. You found it odd, since your mom's only ever seemed to have cards in theirs. Here. He leaned in to pass the crisp tin to Cove, giving him a wink and a whisper. Get something for your friend too. Sure.
Good kid.
That's my boy. Cove's dad ruffled his son's hair as he was straightening back up, the bill in his hand still held out towards the green-haired boy. Take care. Cove accepted the bill after a second and slipped it into his pocket. Then, with one last nod to his dad, he turned and started walking. You followed after him, intrigued at the possibilities this outing might bring. Cove strayed towards the gentle tide, creeping up the sand, and you fell into place beside him. It was a nice day. The sun was shining, and there weren't many clouds in the sky, though the wind coming off the ocean kept it from being too hot. You took in a deep breath, enjoying the scent of salt and ocean air. When you looked at Cove, he was dragging his feet through the sand a little, and you slowed down to wait for him. His eyes searched the ground intently. What is it? You didn't feel the need to ask why. What is it? Nothing. He kept staring down at the ground, though. You bit down on your lip a little, wanting to say something else, but not knowing what. The comforting sound of the waves filled the silence with pleasant white noise, and you played a little game with yourself as you walked along, getting as close to the water as possible without getting wet. It resulted in you having to run up the sand quickly when a wave brushed in more than a few times. And although Cove threw a few glances your way, he didn't say a word. You didn't either. What did you want to go to the shops for? What do you usually do on the beach? What do you want to go to the shop for? I need a new sand pail. Yeah? What happened to your old one? Cove narrowed his eyes, seemed to think deeply for a second.
Whoa.
It disappeared. What? Really? Cove ducked his head down, lacing his fingers behind his back. It didn't seem like he was going to continue, so you nudged his arm. How did that happen? Well, Cove opened his mouth and shut it again, considering. I took it to the beach one day. When I got home, it wasn't anywhere. You left it there? Nope, it wasn't at the beach when I went back. Then you lost it. It disappeared.
So...
What about you? What do you do out here? I like swimming. I like looking at fish. I like to build sandcastles. Last summer, Lizzie and I built one that was as tall as me, and sometimes they have sandcastle building competitions down by the boardwalk. Cool, I bet you could win. You smiled at Cove. Maybe the two of you would build one together one day. Once you reached the shopping area, the noise level grew exponentially. No longer just waves and footsteps, but the chatter of people enjoying the lovely summer day, the call of birds trying to find bits of food left behind, and lots of salespeople trying to get attention. You sniffed the air as you walked beside Cove. You could still smell the ocean, but there were other scents now too: pizza, pretzels, hot donuts. It's nice. It's not very nice. It's alright. It's nice. The energy surrounding the area seemed to fill you, and there was a bounce in your step as you began looking at all the familiar sights. There were so many things to do, you didn't know where to begin. You looked at Cove, hoping he was just as excited as you were. Cove was glancing from one side of the street to the other with a look in his aquamarine eyes that you couldn't quite work out. What's that? Cove pointed to a large crowd of people gathered near a few tables, with large, colorful umbrellas blooming from their middles. You couldn't see past the adults who were blocking the way, but you knew there must be something worth seeing. Without another word, the two of you hurried over to see what all the commotion was about. Feast your eyes on the amazing Alexander. In the center of the crowd was a man with a tall hat and a funny green coat that had 3 long tails. There was a little table next to him with a cloth hanging over it that read "The Amazing Alexander" in glittery golden script. Why tell people his name if it's already on a sign? Cove hummed with understanding, then turned to walk away just as the Amazing Alexander began shuffling a deck of cards. I want to see the show. Cove glanced back at the man. He then briefly lifted his arms up off his sides before returning them to place. Okay. He may not be impressed, but at least he didn't ditch you. You grinned, waving for him to follow you as you raced back to stand in the crowd. With that, it began. The magic man pulled one card out of the deck, showing it to the curious onlookers. It was a 4 of diamonds. Watch closely. You did, squeezing through a few of the adult onlookers to get a better view. Suddenly the man snapped his fingers and the card just disappeared. Whoa! The amazing Alexander, who had earned his title, turned his head and looked directly at you. He reached out with a kind smile. What's this behind your ear? Nothing. Tell me. You backed away. Tell me. This had to be going somewhere and you needed to find out. He smelled like popcorn and candy when he stepped closer. It was great. You felt a tug, and then he pulled the 4 of diamonds out from behind your ear. What? You knew that it couldn't really have come from your ear, but you still didn't get how he done it. There was light applause from the crowd, and the man gave a deep bow. This is for you. The magician plucked a pair of balloons from a clump of them tied down onto his table. Both were in the shape of a dolphin instead of being a normal circle. And one for your friend too. Thank you for being my assistant. Wow. Now you were really grateful he chose you. After that, he went to someone else in the crowd. Pick a card, any card. My uncle does that every time he visits. Not the balloons, the stuff with cards. Co spoke plainly while reaching over to take the dolphin that had been designated for him. Maybe it wasn't so special. Co was just ruining the fun. At least you had a fun time. You wondered if Co's whole family was magic. At least you had fun. At least you had fun. You saw a magic trick and you got a great balloon. That was more than enough to make it a worthwhile event. You thought that if you could find a card to practice with, maybe you could make it disappear too. The crowd started to clear some, and you noticed to the side there was a whole rack of brightly colored kaleidoscopes on display. You picked up a kaleidoscope. You picked up a Rubik's Cube. You picked up a magic 8-ball. You walked past the toys. You briefly looked over the rack of toys, thinking that they could be interesting to look at, but you didn't really feel in the mood at the moment. Co picked up one of the kaleidoscopes and looked through, twisting the tube at the end. After a second, he set it back on the rack, moving to the other side of the stall. He went under the awning, careful of his own floating dolphin, and you joined them. Did you have places like this in your old town? Are you having fun? I don't really like it here. Co blinked at you for a moment, and you wondered if you shouldn't have asked. You knew how much you missed that place. Not really. You nodded in understanding, looking over at the stalls nearby. While Co looked at sand pails, you were drawn to a table with colorful keychains laid out on it. They were sewn in the shape of sea creatures, and there was a plaque that read "Handmade" standing proudly in front of it. There were lots of different types. You saw a dolphin, a shark, a crab, a turtle. You picked up the shark, you picked up the crab, you picked up the turtle. Your hand stopped on the sleeping turtle, just barely poking its head out of the shell. It had flecks of metallic green on its back that caught the sunlight when you picked it up. You remembered the turtles you had seen in a movie. You had been mesmerized by the way they gently glided through the water. You were instantly enamored. Checking the price though, your heart fell. $6. You didn't know much about money, but you thought that was a lot to spend on one thing. You rarely have more than a $5 bill to your name. Is that what you want? Huh? Oh. It's $6. I didn't bring any money.
Alright.
It's fine. Really? Really? Are you sure? Hooray! You don't have to. I don't want you to get it for me. Are you sure? Cove took the keychain from your hands, and that was that. He was holding a small yellow bucket for himself too. I was always gonna get you something. I already got the money for it. You beamed, excited at the idea of displaying the keychain somewhere in your room. It was nice of Cove's dad to let Cove buy something for you too. You had to remember to thank him next time you saw him. After Cove paid, the two of you stepped out of the store side by side, your balloon dolphins knocking together and spiraling around in the air. You watched Cove hold up his new pail to his face, examining it thoroughly. Hey, Cove? Yeah? Thanks for the keychain. Don't worry about it. Cove looked further down the street where different food carts were lined up. He rested his non-cast arm over his stomach, and just as he did, yours let out a light growl. You hadn't eaten since breakfast, and after all of this wandering around, you were definitely ready for some lunch. Let's get some food. Yeah. You two wandered around a short while, looking at all the delicacies that were available. Everything looked delicious, and as the different smells, both sweet and salty, wafted over to you, your stomach growled even louder. After passing up hot dogs, snow cones, ice cream, and pizza, you both agreed on pretzels. Cove got something sweet and cinnamony, and you got a plain one, got one with cheese, got one with sprinkles, got one with chocolate, got the same. Got one with chocolate. You licked your lips hungrily as the vendor handed your pretzel over, ready to take a big bite. It had tiny marshmallows on it and was dripping with chocolate, just how you liked it. Your moms didn't like you to eat too much sugar, but this was a special occasion. You found an empty table close enough to the beach that the grit of the sand made terrible noises when you dragged the chairs out to sit down. These balloons are gonna make it hard to eat. Cove placed his bucket on the table as he stared at his still balled up hand that was wrapped around the string. You opened your mouth to agree before an idea hit you. I know. After carefully placing your pretzels somewhere it wouldn't get sandy, you tugged the balloon dolphin out of Cove's hand and tied it in a delicate bow around his wrist.
Oh.
Cove bounced his arm up and down in place, testing the stability of your knot. After watching his balloon jostle around but remain attached, he smiled satisfied. There, now do mine. He repeated the ritual. Cove struggled somewhat with the cast, restricting his fingers on one hand and a string already tangled around the other.
Okay.
Got it. The two of you spent a moment admiring your handiwork, both hands now free to allow easy munching on your pretzels. You bit into the doughy treat, savoring the taste on your tongue with a smile as you looked out over the ocean. After a time you finished your pretzel. You were done before Cove. It was boring not having anything to do. You pulled on the string of your balloon to bring it down to your level. Then you held the dolphin in your hands, manipulating it to make it look like it was jumping through the air. If you turned to face towards the beach, it almost looked like it was swimming in the waves like a real dolphin. A laugh came from your side. When you glanced back at Cove, he had left the remaining part of his pretzel on the wrapper, and he was gripping his dolphin too. Mine's name is Merriweather. He's the prince of the dolphins. Mine's name is Splash. They star in movies. Mine's name is Cherry. She's actually an alien. Mine's name is Sam. They're just a regular dolphin. Mine's name is Merriweather. He's the prince of dolphins. He wears a crown made of seaweed, and all his friends are merfolk. Every now and then, he'll make friends with a kid and let them ride on his back. Wishing you could meet a real dolphin like Merriweather. What's yours? Cope considered this question, placing the balloon against the table and resting his free arm across it in contemplation. It's... With a loud pop, the dolphin exploded into ribbons. Oh no! For a second, all Cole did was gape in shock, like you. Then his cheeks puffed up, squinting his eyes, and you saw tears start to glisten.
Jamie!
Jamie, You made a joke. You offered to find Alexander. You offered to give Cove your balloon. You didn't say anything. He would be alright. You looked at Cove, then up to your balloon, bobbing gently in the air above. You can have mine. That was better than letting him cry more. Cove stepped, glancing up at the balloon, then back at you. No, it's yours. I don't want to take it from you. It's okay, really. Cove shook his head. Even though it wasn't your fault, you felt bad. Still, the offer seemed to lift Cove's spirits, and that was good. The passing of Cove's balloon was the last major event of your adventure. In the end, the two of you headed back late that afternoon. You separated on the beach, and while Cove went straight home with his brand new sand pail in his hand, you decided to sit for a while. You watched the waves and the sunset, fiddling with your new keychain. Another summer day was drawing to a close. It had been a good one, except for the sad final note. One sweltering summer day, you were in your living room with Cove, listening to the sounds of the birds chattering outside the window while you lay across the rug on the floor. Cove's dad had dropped him off earlier, and your moms had left the two of you, along with Lizzie, to play amongst yourselves. It had been too hot to go outside in the afternoon. At least according to Mommy, so your sister was starting to get impatient, waiting for her golf class that evening. The three of you had trouble finding something fun to do. The beach and the playground were off limits, and you felt that it was too warm for anything like playing with your fuzzy toy animals. Then suddenly a light came to Lizzie's big brown eyes, and her smile spread wide across her face. Having an idea gave her a new wave of energy. Since we're stuck inside, we should be adults. They don't play outdoors anyways. There's always inside and telling everybody they're too busy to play.
Why?
Why? I said why, and it'll be fun, duh. What do they do inside that we don't? Besides, use the phone a lot. Excluding a small huff, Lizzie decides to ignore Cove.
What do you think?
What do you think? Do you want to? Cove said it. That doesn't sound fun. I bet we could come up with something else. I don't know. I want to. Cove said it. That doesn't sound fun. Come on! Neither of you have had one single idea all day. You could tell that Lizzie wasn't about to give in anytime soon. Fine. With her victory against Cove under her belt, Lizzie turned to you, triumphant. I'll try it, but that sounds boring. Okay, I'll stay. Sorry, I have other stuff to do. You kept hesitating. I'll try it, but that sounds boring. It's not gonna be, I guarantee. Lizzie seemed more determined than ever, and you could only sigh. Satisfied that neither of you were about to bail on her, Lizzie thought over her options while you watched. After a few seconds, she clapped her hands together and beamed, apparently having settled on something without asking either of you. Okay, I'm gonna be a professional golfer. Jamie, you and Cove can be a beach volleyball player, a gymnast, or a tennis player. Why can't we pick anything we want? Because I have a fun idea. That's why. And we have to play sports as adults? Yep. But there's other kinds of sports too.
Right?
It isn't the same. What do you think, Jamie? Don't those choices sound super cool? You want to be that, huh? Isn't there anything else we can be? Lizzie stomped a foot on the ground. Nope. Come on. Just decide already. Knowing Lizzie wouldn't let this go anytime soon, you sighed. Cove was not impressed with Lizzie's attitude, though he didn't bother talking more about it for now. You thought over the list of possibilities: beach volleyball, gymnast, or tennis. Out of all of them, he preferred to play gymnastics. If you couldn't spend the afternoon doing cartwheels and handstands in the backyard, then you might as well practice them inside. There wouldn't be as much space as there was outside, but you could still try. Yes, that was clearly a top option. I want to be a gymnast. All right. How about you, Cove? I pick volleyball. I should have known. Okay, so Jamie, you're a famous gymnast. And Cove, you're on a popular beach volleyball team. And Lizzie ponytail bobbed when she proudly stretched her arms wide. We're Olympic athletes who just competed in the Olympics. Cove didn't seem all that impressed with the announcement. He made a face and adjusted the glasses on his nose. That's really specific.
Rude.
That's what makes it fun. Anyway, Lizzie marched back and forth in front of the both of you, getting lost in her own imagination. I won all gold medals, and people are calling me the next Mickey Wright. Who's that? Lizzie stopped on the spot and turned on him, her brown eyes shining with impatience. It doesn't matter if you know who she is. It's a golf thing. You guys won medals too. Cove, your team was bronze, and Jamie, you barely missed out on the gold and got silver. It's more real if we're not all first place. I'm okay with that. You shrugged your shoulders, agreeing with Lizzie. A silver medal was still really good in the Olympics. I'm not... Cove folded his arms across his chest, apparently not as happy as you were with the decision.
Sorry.
Lots of people lose at the Olympics. Them's the breaks. Then you're the one who did, not me. Lizzie looked taken aback by Cove's declaration, as though the thought of her losing was completely absurd. No way! It wouldn't make sense. I'm already practicing my golf game. She took a golfing stance to make her point, pretending to swing her club and hit an invisible ball. So what kind of house do you want to live in? Cove hadn't changed his mind about winning, but thinking about where he'd live as an adult appealed to him, apparently because he looked back at Lizzie with some of the anger fading. I'm going to live on the beach. Lizzie made a face at him, poking out her tongue. That's kind of boring. We already have that. No, not like the normal houses, where with a street on it, right on the sand by the water. Just like that, all the tension was back. You haven't even had a chance to choose where you wouldn't want to live. That's not very fun or smart, Cove. You can't live on a beach of sand and shells. But I want to, and I will. Cove narrowed his eyes at Lizzie, even though she stood half a head taller than him. You didn't give out a list of things to pick from this time, so I'm picking that. Why are we even playing pretend if we can't imagine anything? Jeez. Well, I'm gonna live in a mansion far away from here, and far away from you. One with an indoor pool and a place to practice my award-winning golfing.
It's not fair.
How come you were yelling about mine when your idea is even more impossible? Lizzie's face flushed red, her hands balling into fists at her sides. It is not impossible, and it's better than yours. Disagreements always seemed to crop up when the two of them were together, and you always felt like you were stuck in the middle. But when it came to the topic at hand, this time you thought, you'd prefer a mansion. Being on the beach was cooler. You wanted to agree with Lizzie. Cove was right. You were tired of deciding between either of them. I hate to say it, but Cove was right. Cove's idea is good. You shouldn't say yours is the only right one. No one asked for your opinion. He smiled slightly over the agreement, then turned to Lizzie with bolstered confidence. You can swim whenever you want if you live on the beach. We can still swim anytime we want from where we live now. Being a little closer doesn't mean anything. Says you. The two of them scowled at each other. You're being so unreasonable. I don't get what you want. This game doesn't make sense.
Ugh.
It does. You have to be realistic. I said that. But you're not. You had no idea what to do to make them stop at this point. It seemed like the two of them would just keep working each other up as long as they could. Nothing you'd said so far had kept them from being mad. Thankfully, like a greeting card angel, Mom walked into the room. Lizzie rushed to her, hanging on to the hem of her shirt and poking out her tongue at Cove. Lizzie, Jamie, it's time to get ready to go.
You alright with that?
Sorry you have to leave already, Cove. Their mommy said she'll walk you home as you won't be left in the cold. Cove was still glaring at Lizzie, his face flushed red with anger. I can go by myself. But
Bye.
bye, Jamie. There was still a harsh edge to the brief farewell, but you knew it wasn't you he was mad at. Without giving Mom a chance to stop him, Cove stood up and stalked out of the room, shoulders drawn tight.
Huh?
Okay. Worried, Mom turned to look down at you and Lizzie. You two were playing nice with our new friend, weren't you? You told the truth. No, Lizzie and Cove kept yelling at each other. They wouldn't stop fighting about everything. Your sister's jaw dropped, looking betrayed, as Mom put both hands on her hips. Elizabeth, I told you to be kind to him. He's having a hard time right now. Lizzie's mouth closed back up, replaced by a tiny frown. I know, I tried, but he was...
That's enough.
No buts. We both know you can show someone a great time when you put your mind to it. We're going to apologize to Cove and his dad over the phone when he gets home from work tonight. Lizzie hung her head, dragging a foot across the ground in front of her. Okay, Mom. Good girl. You caught pieces of Lizzie sulking to herself about how it was his fault, too, but it was over. Right. We better get a move on.
Let's go.
Let's go, kids. Nolani, where did you leave the car keys? Mom hustled you all out the door, and you noticed during the car ride to golf practice that Lizzie was quieter than usual. She was usually the first one to request which music to listen to in the car, but she didn't say a thing. Your parents noticed she wasn't in a mood to be bothered. They gave her space, and Mommy just asked you what you'd like to listen to. You picked your favorite song. It always made the car ride more fun. You chose the soundtrack to a cool movie you saw a couple months ago. You choose a song you knew Lizzie liked. Maybe that would cheer her up. You were happy to see it brighten her up right away, and she started singing along with you. Soon enough, her bad mood was a thing of the past. When the car ride was over, you spent the twilight hour watching Lizzie hit things with other girls her age. You didn't know much about golf, but you could tell that she really liked it, so you sat with your moms and tried to puzzle it out. It was nice sitting outside after being cooped up in the house all day, and you stretched out your legs to let the last few minutes of sun warm your skin. When the sun was finally out of sight, dipping behind the horizon, you all got ready to leave. Instead of going straight home, your moms took the family out to dinner. You went to a restaurant you had all been going to ever since you could remember. The whole afternoon had been a bunch of shouting you hadn't been able to stop, but you could kind of tell that all this helped Lizzie be less angry. The car ride home was quiet, with only the radio providing escape from silence. Lizzie had been in better spirits now, but the closer you got to your neighborhood, the more she wiggled in her seat and frowned out the window. She knew what was coming when you all got back home. Clearly, she was dreading it. Soon enough, Mom was turning onto your street, then reversing into the driveway. Once she cut the ignition, it was dead silent. No one spoke. only unbuckled their seatbelts and opened their doors. Lizzie was the last one out. Once everyone was inside and done taking off their shoes, she propped her hands on her hips.
So,
Now then, Mr. Holden's car is in his driveway, so he should be back from work. That's good news, isn't it, Elizabeth? You and Cove can hash things out before the day is done. Lizzie didn't complain or put up a fight. Her head ducked so she didn't have to meet anyone's eyes. She nodded once. Good, let's move this to the kitchen. Mom went over to the house phone. The rest of you following behind her. Mommy put a gentle hand on Lizzie's shoulder as they walked side by side. You watched them from the back. This was only happening because you told on Lizzie. You didn't regret it. You felt a little guilty, like you had betrayed your sister. You hadn't liked doing it, but had to. But it was her fault for doing it in the first place. You hadn't liked doing it, but had to. Being a tattletale didn't feel good, and you wouldn't want someone else to tell your moms everything you did. Still, your mom had asked directly, and you wanted to be a liar even less. The four of you stood around the kitchen in a lopsided square. All eyes were on Lizzie, who kept her gaze on her feet. You remember the number for Cove's house, don't you, honey? Lizzie jerked her head in another nod, sullen. Without further prompting, she stepped forward and she began to dial. Mom reached over and pressed a button on the base. Suddenly, you could hear the phone ringing. She turned on the speaker. The phone rang a couple of times and stopped. Mr. Holden's warm voice came through the other end. Even Holden residence. Lizzie looked over at Mommy's unsure. She nodded encouragingly. Hi, Mr. Holden. It's, Lizzie. Can I talk to Cove? Hi, Mr. Holden. It's, Lizzie. Can I talk to Cove?
Absolutely.
Lizzie Thompson? What a surprise. But of course you can say hey to the boy. He sounded cheery as usual, though definitely meant it when he said it was a surprise. You thought hard, and you were sure that your sister had never called Cove's house before. Mom spoke up before Holden or Lizzie could say anything more. Her arms were crossed over her chest, her lips pursed. Hi, Cliff. Now, Lonnie, Jamie, and I are here too. Good evening. We're sorry to bother you so late. Hey, Mr. Holden. The gang's all here? Huh? Is something the matter? His voice grew a bit concerned. Mom was quick to reassure him. No, well, yes, but it's going to be okay. Lizzie and Cove got into a bit of a fight today. We were hoping that the two of them could talk and make up. Is this a good time for you and Cove?
What?
A fight? Cove didn't tell me anything about that when I came home. It does explain the funk he's been in tonight. He chuckled lightly. Despite that, it didn't seem like he really thought it was funny. Anyway, it's good you didn't catch us at a bad time. I'll grab him for you. There was some shuffling on the other end. He must not have gone far because you could still hear him calling out. Cove, there's someone on the phone for you. After a beat of silence, there was more muffled talking from Cove's dad. Come on, bud. Lizzie called just so she could talk to you.
Are you sure?
Jamie's on the other end listening to you, too. Don't you want to say hi? It took a bit of back and forth, though the conversation seemed one-sided, since you couldn't hear Cove properly. Eventually, Cove took the phone from his dad.
Hi.
Hello. You opened your mouth, only for Mommy to catch your eye and shake her head softly. You frowned, but didn't say anything. Hey, it's Lizzie. Yeah, I know, Dad told me. Cove's tone was defensive. Lizzie turned to Mom, scowling. One stern look from her, though, and Lizzie turned away.
Sorry.
I just called to say I'm sorry for not playing nice with you today. I won't do it again. Lizzie's eyes were downcast, her voice low. You could tell she felt uncomfortable apologizing to Cove in front of everyone. She was still being genuine about feeling bad. Cove must have realized that too because he sighed quietly. I want gold. And I think Jamie should win too. Really? He thought you were worth gold, even though you hadn't even wanted it? Lizzie was momentarily stunned, silent by the demand. She probably forgot that had even happened already. Alright, we all win the gold. Okay, I guess I'm sorry too. A sense of relief was washed over everyone at his acceptance of the apology. Mom uncrossed her arms while Mommy's shoulders relaxed, Lizzie's eyebrows raised up. You wondered if she thought that he'd refuse her apology. Dad, can I get off the phone now? You couldn't see him, but it was obvious that Cove felt awkward about the situation. He had come off uncomfortable the entire time, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go back to your room if you want. Be sure to say goodbye first, though. Bye, Lizzie. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jamie. He perked up at the mention of your name. You smiled, even if he couldn't see it. Bye, Cove. With that said, Cove must have handed the phone to his dad and left, since Mr. Holden spoke up.
That's a relief.
All's well that ends well, as they say. Thanks for arranging this. I'm sure he appreciates it. As Mom replied, Lizzie tugged on Mommy's hand to catch her attention. Can I go now, too?
Good job.
Sure, sweetie. Thank you very much for apologizing to Cove. Mom flashed a brief smile at Lizzie and nodded her agreement. Given permission to leave, Lizzie scurried off towards the stairs. She seemed to be feeling much better with the incident behind her. Mom and Mommy returned to the phone, taking it off the speaker. They continued talking to Mr. Holden. You couldn't tell what about. You were glad that was the end of it all. Lizzie and Cove might not get along, and probably still won't, but they weren't mad at each other anymore. Mom and Mommy weren't upset either. Everything was finally back to normal. With that thought, you retreated to your own room with a spring in your step. Okay, I'm gonna save there. And that'll be all for this episode. Thank you for joining me, Lacey Darkblood. Peace out. Bye-bye.